Hello and welcome, I'm Jasper and this is the PBandJCast where we explore careers, ideas and authentic conversations. I'm thankful for you investing time to help broaden perspective and joining me in the journey as we appreciate the process of finding and adding value. Welcome to the first episode of 2021. I know that 2020 has been challenging for so many, especially with the spanner in the works of COVID-19. But if you haven't already, I'd hope to encourage you to take the time to find what you can appreciate in the past year. And now, onto 2021. Whether you're a resolution person or not, there is something significant about entering a new year, hence the excuse for fireworks and drinking and all that jazz. So far, I've had quite a lot of fun with PB&J. I'm still finding my feet, but the plan is to improve sound first and foremost, and hopefully provide more consistent and quality content. I do need to get better at the social media side of things, but right now the focus is on the quality of what I'm releasing. So please do give me constructive feedback. I've really learnt a lot so far, and it's even helped deepen conversations with others and my friends and guests after the recording. Onto the feedback I have received, thankfully, a lot of that has been quite kind, and surprisingly, guests has also commented how they've enjoyed coming on and how it's helped them. So that was quite a surprise. I've even had a few people ask to be interviewed, and yeah, I've got a few lined up, so I'm pretty keen for what's to come in 2021 this year. Onto this episode, it's split into two parts. Part one, where Gary shares his journey on becoming a high school science teacher, and part two, where the conversation changes flow. I have a feeling some people might prefer the second part better, but who knows? And actually, coincidentally, after recording this conversation, someone shared that unfortunately their son had been bullied by one of their high school teachers just last year. And it made me remember how much of an impact that high school teachers have, and made me reflect as to what it was like being a high school student those years ago. So yeah, I thought that was quite interesting. Anyways, here's episode 1, part 1. I hope you enjoy. Today I have Gary. He is a teacher. So what was your first job?
So my first job was when I was 14. I worked at McDonald's for about 3 years. So I just had like a bunch of different fast food stints. And then moved up in the world a bit, I guess, doing selling cigarettes when I was in my 20s in uni. Which is a bit odd because like now I'm a teacher and
Officially
legally selling cigarettes. Yeah. It's like in it for a tobacconist. Yeah. So it wasn't like on the street corner or something. Selling singles.
Yeah.
So now it's 4 years into my career.
Cool. It wasn't your first go-to, was it? Teaching?
No, I started in engineering after school and like I just hated it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I'm much of a 9-to-5 person.
Okay.
Yeah, I just need to be doing stuff, hands-on types of jobs. Yeah, so I really struggled with, just the thought of doing engineering.
Then like what was the transition? Because, there's a lot of different jobs out there that aren't necessarily 9 to 5. When was the moment, or what was the influence to be like, okay, I want to study teaching. I want to be a teacher?
Yeah, probably about a year in. Like I just wasn't enjoying the course, and like I wasn't great at it as well. Like I was passing, but I didn't want to be average. I didn't want to be doing something that I don't even like and be average at it. Like sitting at that moment, sort of like a year in, I started to have a think about my actual interests, because I did engineering sort of like during that time the boom was on and like everyone wanted to go into engineering, and like parents were really supporting me to get into that field. I wouldn't say I didn't have much input, but not as much as I did for teaching, I guess. Whereas like going to teaching was purely my call.
Yeah.
So I guess a bit of ownership as well going into that.
What about teaching was what, I guess, drew you to it then?
Like I've always worked, or not always worked, always liked working with young people. Like I did like soccer coaching and all that stuff. Been really involved in sports, like youth level sports for ages, and just generally like working or getting involved with, younger people, and they've got like this excitement about them, which is like really refreshing compared to working with adults, because adults sometimes they get stuck in this routine, right? And they kind of seen a lot of things and, it's hard to get them excited about stuff. Whereas like younger people, they're just willing to give things a shot because they're so green. And that was really refreshing. And like I've always loved sport, so I thought like those two things kind of a good combination, and sort of looked into it a bit more and enrolled in uni.
You're right. That's how we roll.
Yeah.
For uni though, how did you find it, the degree?
So I did a double degree in sports science and education.
Okay.
So I found the education part like super easy to the point that like I barely went to uni, and I stacked up all my classes so that I could work like 3 full days, because the job that I was at the cigarette shop, like they couldn't give me 3-hour shifts or 4-hour shifts. It was a whole day shift. Yeah. So like 8:30 to 5. So kind of have to like commit for the whole day to get shifts there. Yeah, so kind of worked out because I sort of could catch up on that on the education aspect at home anyway, and during study week and all that. So yeah, that side of it, things wasn't that challenging, other than prac. Prac was a different story. Yeah. But yeah, the sports science stuff, like a lot of my study time did go into the sports science stuff, because that's a lot more like technical, a lot more things that concepts I've never been introduced to before. Yeah. So yeah, I've just sort of focused more towards that part, and I found that part a bit more challenging than the actual teaching side. Yeah. Which I know a lot of it is kind of instinct and common sense in some ways. Okay. So you could kind of depend on that aspect of you, whereas you can't like depend on intuition and all that for the sports science stuff, right? Because it's got technical elements.
Yeah, it's a lot of rote learning. Hey,
yeah,
you can't. You're not just born with I know what this muscle is named or
exactly.
What was common sense for you, I guess, for the teaching side of things?
I don't know. A lot of I didn't particularly find a uni that I went to amazing in terms of preparing us and teaching us for the actual job itself. Okay. So a lot of the content that they were teaching us, even at uni, felt like it was fluffed up. Like I said, to me, it's common sense. Maybe to some people it's not, and I'm just taking it for granted. Yeah. But some units really feel like it's just fluffed up for me, and it's just put in there to make the degree a degree, like a 3-year, 4-year degree. Yeah, we've got like whole units committed to like inclusive education, which like it's a great concept, very important, but in terms of the content of that particular unit, it is like very basic and like very common sense.
And it's something that you would otherwise do anyway.
Exactly, yeah.
I think that's quite common talking to different people that go through a bachelor's in particular, where you have to do all these random general units, but a lot of it they feel is quote unquote a waste of time. Yeah. But then, like you said, it's like, oh, maybe for some people this isn't common sense. However, if you were to, one day be able to formulate a course, how would you have done your course differently?
Oh, heaps more practical elements, because I learned about, 80% of like how I am as a teacher now from just being on prac, like actually teaching, actually talking to teachers and learning from them and watching them teach. Like looking at their resources and all that stuff that you don't get to do as much in uni, because uni is very theoretical in terms of teaching as well. Like we get given all these theories about what this guy says about how kids learn, and it's all amazing. Like it sounds awesome, but like practically it's, I don't know, to me it's very niche in terms of the application. Like you can't really apply it a lot of the time, because the decisions that you've got to make at the workplace, it's kind of like split second, right? When a kid misbehaves, like you don't have time to think about what does person XXX from like these studies say about behavior management. It's just like, it's intuitive and instinct, I guess, in how you deal with that, because you've got to respond immediately. Yeah. So yeah, in that sense, I found it a bit unuseful. Okay. All these theories. Yeah. Yeah. It's good to have in your back of your mind, I guess, but yeah, how much of it you can actually apply in a practical sense, I haven't really found that particularly useful. Yeah. I think if I had it my way, all uni courses definitely have a like vac work or practical element to it. Because I think everyone just learns better practically and actually getting involved in the role, and you can actually taste what it's like in that workplace and see if it's actually for you or not. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I did my course has a lot of practical components as well. I found that very insightful and very helpful because you don't want to finish the end of the degree.
Yeah.
And you go into the workplace and you're like, I do not like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some people go through that because they don't know what the workplace is like and what the responsibilities are and all that sort of stuff. And it's a shame because, they've spent all this time looking at the theory side, because theory is one thing, applying and practically doing it is another.
I think going off that point, what's the biggest difference between being on prac and placement to then actually qualifying and being a teacher? What surprised you and what didn't surprise you?
So as a prac student, you have very high expectations by like your mentors and your supervisors and all that. So like when I had my last prac, I found it quite intensive and really challenging because I think I had to teach like 5 lessons a day. So pretty much a whole load. And then my mentor needed lesson plans for each lessons, like a day in advance. We have a template that we have to use, or not have to, but like they need some sort of structure in our lesson plan. So we have to have like all these details, like the learning objectives, what the students already know, links to the curriculum, and then like a breakdown of like each activity, like not so much minute by minute, but like 10-minute blocks.
Yeah.
So, and you have to like write really explicitly what's the instructions, how you're going to instruct the students in that section. So it was so time consuming. I think it took me like an hour to make one lesson plan, and to do that 5 times a day and then having to do it in advance of like the next day because that's what they expected of me.
Gotcha.
Like I found it pretty challenging and that was for like 10 weeks as well. So I guess that's when they really push you. Whereas all the other pracs before that, it was like you're teaching a small group of students or like teaching 2 classes a day for like 2 weeks. So it wasn't as intensive, but I totally get why they would make you do that because like that's as close as you're going to get as to having your own classroom. Yeah.
Getting also the administrative responsibilities.
Yeah, exactly right.
I don't think we've actually spelt it out. What type of teacher are you? My bad.
Can edit that one in. So I'm a sport teacher by training, but I have been doing science for like the first 4 years of my career. So I'm just going into a new role next year.
Congratulations.
Doing sport. Yeah,
you just got a promotion.
Thank you.
As head of PE for the school?
No, not head of PE. It's a branch of PE, so it's extracurricular sport.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm still like kind of have my own area, but I still answer to the head of sport.
Gotcha. But you're like a supervisor in your branch of
Correct.
PE.
Yeah.
I didn't even, sorry, my bad. I'm quite ignorant. I thought there was just one PE branch.
Yeah. For most schools, there are, but they've sort of like separated this role because they're trying to really expand this extracurricular stuff that they've got going on. So the school has like a vision as to what that program's going to look like. So they kind of separate it from sport. So that gives the person running that more time and more resources to get it off the ground.
Cool. That makes sense. Congratulations nonetheless. I know in Australia, you have the different specialties of teachers and some of them do dual things. I remember my math teachers was also doing PE at one point in time. How does it work for your studying? Do you have to specialize when you do your education?
Yeah. So generally, if you want to do high school, you do, like a double degree. So one being your education degree and one being your specialty. So if you want to be a math teacher, you do mathematics. If you want to be a economics teacher, you'd obviously do economics, so forth. I think primary is a little bit different. I think primary you do just a 1 degree, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
So it's like a primary degree and you're pretty much trained in teaching like year 1 to 6 in a whole bunch of subject areas. Right. So like English, maths, they're all sort of, you do units from all those courses into that degree.
Yeah.
Whereas like for me, I did sports science. I didn't do any math, like economics or HAS subjects. HAS units. It was like all sciencey, all like sport related subjects.
And would those qualifications be prerequisites to getting a job in those subjects, or is it more recommended?
It's recommended. It's really up to the school. Once you're in the door, it's really up to the school what they want to do with you. So, but yes, if obviously schools are going to be looking, like if they're looking for a science teacher, they're obviously going to be looking for people with a science background.
Yep.
But once you're in the door, If there's a need in another department and they see you as fit to fulfill that role, yeah, lots of schools will try and make that move internally, whether that's, one teacher being part of multiple departments or just shuffling staffing around.
Gotcha.
It's fairly common, yeah.
So schools still have quite a few, I guess, it's not as regulated, but would you say a degree is a prerequisite, though, in Australia to be a teacher?
Yeah, so you need a teaching degree.
Why did you choose the bachelor's pathway then?
Well, because it was either that or like a grad dip at that point.
Okay.
And to do a grad dip, you already need to have a pre-existing degree.
Gotcha. But
And
you
I didn't
stopped
have one.
halfway.
Yeah, I stopped halfway and I wasn't keen on doing another 3 years of eng.
Yeah. Fair enough. Made the right choice.
Yeah, and I was only a year in, so it kind of made sense to do a double degree and kind of start all over again.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm not gonna lie. Hopefully this is structured enough for the audience. We've kind of bounced all over the shop.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's cool. So you are a science high school teacher who is going to transition next year into a more supervisor role in PE.
Yeah, so I'll be in like mid-management next year.
Okay, cool, man. Earning the big bucks.
Oh.
So humble. And after you graduated, was it hard to get a job or?
Yeah, I think it depends what field. Like my original goal was to get into sport, like straight away, but it was pretty tough to get into that field because, most schools don't really require many sport teachers.
Yep.
And most schools don't really prioritize the sports department. So yeah, it was tough for me to get in the door. So I just did relief teaching for like a year, which it's great in its own way.
Yep.
Money was awesome and like working hours were great because, you don't have to plan anything. You just show up for the day and you just follow what the original teachers left you, like the kind of work that they've left you. So it's pretty cruisy, but obviously it's not sustainable because some periods like you have no work at all for weeks. And then some periods you might get a call up every day for 2-3 weeks. So yeah, it was inconsistent, but it definitely helped in just putting my name out there to a whole bunch of schools and a whole bunch of teachers and getting to know a whole lot of people, which is good.
So the networking side.
So I was with an agency that helped sort of like put my name out there.
Yep.
And yeah, they helped me get some relief teaching jobs. And so I did that for like 3/4 of a year. So straight after I finished.
That's quite common, hey? I hear most people do relief after they graduate.
Yeah. And I think like at that time, like I wanted to work, but like I also having been studying for so long, like wouldn't really mind having like a bit of a downtime kind of thing. Like I was still looking for jobs, but I wasn't terribly upset that, something didn't fall in my lap straight away. So I was pretty happy doing relief teaching at that point for that period of time. But yeah, obviously, like I said, not sustainable. And at some point you kind of have to push a bit to try and get a more permanent role.
It's like your version of the gap year, hey?
Yeah. Like, yeah, exactly.
Earning a little bit of money and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think during that time I was a little bit apprehensive with traveling because I do want to get a job.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I didn't really want to like take a whole chunk of time off where, especially end of the year, because end of the year is usually when there's lots of turnovers happening.
Yeah.
And usually when I do travel, like with friends, they're only available at the end of the year. So I don't really want to miss out on that time where I could be applying for jobs.
Yeah, fair enough.
For the next year.
The window type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Did you find that most of your year group did the same thing as you?
I know a couple of them went to, so I think we graduated with a group of like 25, 30-ish that did the exact same degree as me. I know a couple of them went to the country because, the government offers some pretty attractive incentives for like graduate teachers to head over to the country. But it just wasn't really my thing. I would have considered it if I was really struggling to find a job. But yeah, like a couple of months in, I wasn't thinking about it. I was happy to just do relief and wait a bit longer.
Yeah.
And yeah, a couple of others did what I did. A couple of others actually got jobs straight away. So yeah, it just depends.
Only 25? I would have imagined there'd be more.
Yeah, so 25 that did the exact same degree as me. So they did sports science and education.
Gotcha.
So there's a whole bunch of other teachers doing other degrees and other qualifications.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it kind of like narrows down towards like your last few years of uni.
Yeah.
Yeah, as you would with any other degree, I guess.
Yeah. I guess this is something that we talked about recently. But what are the most common questions? Because at dinner parties, especially now it's approaching Christmas time, people always ask, "Oh, what do you do?" and stuff. What is the most common questions you get asked?
I think it's more like, how can you work with kids? Something along those lines.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. People have this fear of working with children, I think, or like teenagers. I think especially teenagers.
Yep.
Yeah, because people always like give me this look when I say I'm a high school teacher. They're like, "Oh, how can you like work with teenagers? They're so scary," and all that stuff, which is, each to its own.
Yep.
But yeah, like I said earlier, I think I relate pretty well with them, and I think I can build relationships with them pretty well. So yeah, I just never really saw them as, these people that you're scared of, really. Some of them can be scary. It's like throwing chairs at you and stuff. But
Throwing chairs at you?
I've never had any of that happen to me.
Okay.
But yeah, we've had interesting things happening when I did relief.
Yep.
But yeah, maybe that's a story for later on.
Well, I'll put a note in that. I'm going to ask you about crazy stories later. In terms of, I think I understand what people mean by like they're scared. Because, I think I look back to when I was a teenager and I would have been a handful. And I just like, I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
But what do you think about you makes you, what about your outlook and characteristics and attributes make you more suitable or make you more willing?
Yeah, I think I always view them, like even the challenging ones, like they're still someone else's child. Like they're God's child. So like no matter what wall or what barrier they put up in front of you, like there's still something valuable like behind that. And yeah, during tough times, that's what I kind of have to like remind myself of, and to like keep encouraging myself to like don't ignore or don't write off this particular student, because yeah, like I said, there's for whatever reason they're putting up this wall in front of them, and sometimes we never know what those reasons are, and that's fine. I think that's something that helps me during those, dealing with certain situations or students that are a bit more challenging than others. Yeah.
That just reminded me of, the show Matilda?
No.
You never watched Matilda? Okay, so it's basically this girl, and movie enthusiasts might butcher my explanation, but this girl goes to this high school, and there's this principal who's really mean and harsh, and then there's just one teacher who's just so lovely. And I just see how I can tell you'd be a good teacher. It's always the teachers that kind of see you just as another student, as another name, and like as like a piece of crap that they have to deal with. And that was like the principal in Matilda. But then there's this nice teacher who's like, no, like everyone is an individual and everyone is valuable. And I think it does, as much as people or adults, quote unquote adults, like to look down on children and say, oh, they're not mature, they don't know what they're talking about. I think there is that level where people they can tell whether you care.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
And whether or not they talking from my high school self now, I still remember like the teachers that they were harsh, but I could feel that they had really good intentions, or they were looking out for me and things like that. I appreciated it a lot more, rather than the teachers that were just like, I just want to get this over and done with, or you're such a waste of my time. And I think during that time as well, especially in high school where all the hormones are raging, it doesn't help. It doesn't help at all when you just see someone in authority that's just trying to slam you down, or that's the way it can be perceived anyway.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think they respond differently as well. Like for some kids, you have to slam them. Some kids you can't. So I think that's where the relationships are important, so that you actually know how you can approach a particular student and deal with whatever situation that they might be going through. Because you can't treat every student with like the same method, because it's not going to work for everyone. Like I know there's a student a couple of years ago, like responds really, really badly to authority. If you just tell him what to do, he'll just lose it.
Yeah, right.
Like, I don't know. I don't know what's happening there. I think there's something behind it. But I think if you approach that student with a bit more from like a personal sort of level, he can kind of see it a little bit better. Not much better, but but I found it was a little bit better. Like he wasn't as angry as to when you're just putting your foot down on him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you do that? Like, what does that look like or sound like?
I think talking to them like on a really one-on-one level. Yeah. Sometimes it's tough. Like they don't want to open up, and there's nothing you can do really, and you just kind of have to pick out small points, like keep a genuine interest, like you said, like in their life or whatever it is, small things that you notice to just let them know or make them aware that like you see them as a person, so like I know that kid loves like anime, so then like I don't know much about anime, but like from what I know, like I talk to him a bit about it. Yeah like Naruto, so talk to him about Naruto a little bit. So yeah, it's just those sort of things,
Just trying to connect with them as to like on their level as to what they like, who they are.
Yeah.
Oh, that's clever. I think that's a really good technique, and that's something that applies not just in terms of teaching, but anything.
Yeah.
Because it's always feels better when that other person seems like they're not just looking at you like a box of tick, but who am I as a person?
Yeah, for sure.
That's interesting. What about, was there anything you learned from your previous jobs in, I know, fast food or selling cigarettes, but to teaching? I'd be surprised. I think there's a lot of translated experience.
As a 14, 15-year-old, I think it's just good to be in employment because, you deal with people, you're out of your comfort zone, you don't have mom and dad to sort of like fight your battles, and you're dealing with adults. You get put in your place sometimes, which is good. Sometimes, young people that think, they know everything and... Yeah, so I think that's what I got from that experience. It's just, making a step into adulthood, I guess, more so than anything.
Okay.
From the cigarette shop, it's an interesting job because, as you can imagine, the kind of people that would come through those stores, a lot of them can be quite difficult to deal with.
Okay.
Because then, they're not as privileged as others, or they've got a rough background considering the area that store was at.
Yep.
So I guess in terms of dealing with or negotiating tough situations and dealing with difficult customers, I think a lot of those skills are transferable into like just any workplace, really. It's like conflict resolution, I guess. So I found that quite beneficial, and just general like retail stuff. I think just upselling, I think has a place as well in terms of, like job interviews, you kind of have to like sell yourself, right? So I learned those skills at that workplace, and it's pretty fortunate to have a couple of years working there.
Okay, that's cool. So you reckon that helped you with your job interviews as well?
Yeah, I think so.
And in terms of when you say difficult customers, now does that translate into difficult students?
Yeah, so from difficult adults to difficult young people, I guess.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
What do you think there was something that you didn't expect about teaching, which you wish you had known?
I think the amount of admin, it's like paperworky type of things that are involved. And I think I don't know if it's just a expectation from my workplace or it's just it's the same level of expectations throughout maybe even the public system, because I'm in the private system, so I'm not exactly sure. But we're expected to do a lot of admin in terms of communicating with parents for like every single thing that's happened, communicating with students for like every single thing, just be really open with all methods of communication, I guess. And when you're teaching like 80 students or so, it's pretty tough to keep track sometimes what's done and what's not done and what needs to be done, because different classes may need different amounts of communication or information sent to parents because they have different things going on. So I found that quite difficult the first few years coming into full-time employment at this place. Because and it's using this software which I've never used before. So that was quite difficult, and the people that I was working with kind of not on purpose, but I don't think they realize that not everyone that comes through are familiar with this system. and they just kind of, they're still super helpful if I approach them with anything.
Yeah.
Like, no problems there, but they just kind of assume that you know what you're doing. So it's kind of like your responsibility to be that annoying new person to like keep bugging them about how things are done, which is, sometimes difficult because they've got their own stuff to do.
Yeah.
And you're like this newbie that, kind of sometimes feel like, should I know this already? Or like, is it okay if I ask this question? Yeah. So yeah, that was quite difficult the first few years coming out.
Yeah. Is it incompetence or?
Yeah. 'Cause, you don't want to, that's how I felt anyway.
Nah, fair enough.
Yeah.
And I think it's good that you still remember all that, even though it's been a few years. That way you can extend that hand to new people as well. That's the end of part 1. In part 2, Gary shares how these lessons from the classroom apply beyond it. Pun fully intended. And thanks for tuning in. If you liked it, please do share it. I would love to hear your feedback, ideas, and guest requests. Also, reach out if you'd like to share your own journey. You can contact me directly at thepbandjcast@gmail.com. Also in the description below. Catch you next time.